Hello, welcome to the very first of our podcasts, our video podcast on Cappuccino Communication. It's good that you've registered. I want to speak today about the subject of ministry style. When most people reflect on different ministry types, their mind usually goes to the definition in Ephesians 4 of apostles, prophets, evangelists and pastor teachers. But what I want us to look at today is different styles of leadership and ministry that I believe fall into three groups, which we will call farmer, merchant and warrior. I'm convinced that every pastor or elder has a bias towards one of those dispositions, and note the word bias, for as we shall see later, if too much of who we are is defined by one category, the positive attributes become a shadow side and therefore a very real weakness. In each of them we will consider the primary trait, the vocabulary and the bottom line, together with the positive and potentially negative attributes. So let's take them one at a time and start with the farmer. The farmer's primary gift is unsurprisingly about sowing and reaping. He or she talks in terms of seasons. There's a patience about the farmer. He knows that season follows season and that you can't rush growth. Development takes time, its own time. It might be winter now, but spring will eventually appear, and worrying summer into existence will not make it come any faster. The farmer's theology is likely to reflect the doctrines of grace, and he or she may well be strong on things like predestination. His positive trait is that he does not strive and is patient, and as a leader is usually considered a safe pair of hands. He is hard-working, diligent and makes few mistakes. However, there is a downside when the farmer disposition becomes too dominant and can reveal traits such as being risk-averse, complacency, ploughing the same furrow year after year, and often a lack of creativity. The merchant, on the other hand, couldn't be more different. Their language is about the bottom line. The merchant is a pragmatist who is mainly concerned about what works. He thinks in terms of business models, and his or her library will reflect this. His vocabulary will reveal that he's goal-orientated, and graphs will chart their success and the success of those around them. Numbers are important, and when they're not there in terms of attendance, conversions or offerings, he or she is more likely to be depressed than the farmer who solely thinks in terms of seasons. Now, positively, the merchant expects results and usually achieves them. He's tough on himself in terms of personal growth, and he or she will be consistently looking for new angles and by nature will be a creative leader. But the merchant has a downside too. Taken to extremes, it can make people feel valued only in terms of what they produce and not for their intrinsic worth. No one wants to be a cog in a machine who is on the planet solely to fulfill the ambitions of a third party. I wrote the book Building Bigger People, which has the subtitle Successes More Than Numbers, to address this problem wherever it occurs. And finally, there's the warrior. You can easily pick them out by their language. It's about battle, it's about struggle, it's about victory. Every problem is a hill to be taken or an objective to be overcome. Spiritual warfare is important to them, and wrestling in prayer or dealing with people who they perceive as opposing them is high on their agenda. Warriors certainly get things done and usually don't suffer fools gladly. They're good at seeing the bigger picture and refuse to be intimidated by others. The problem is that they sometimes tend to lack people skills and can be harsh, rude, dominating or even insensitive. So what's the answer? Well, I'm sure you've guessed it already. It's balance. The Bible speaks about sowing and reaping. The farmer, it refers to investing our talents, the merchant, and about fighting the fight of faith and putting on the whole armour of God. Obviously, the warrior. In my view, we should be comprised of about 70% of our primary ministry style and balanced by 15% of each of the other two. But of course, I'm not just talking to individuals right now, I'm also speaking to members of a team, which makes the potential for balance even more exciting and enriching. Not only are we made up of these three aspects as individuals, but good teams also reflect the balance of farmer, merchant and warrior as well. If you have the responsibility for building team, The worst thing that you can do is to pick people just like yourself. They can and should carry your core DNA, but they shouldn't solely emulate your style. Okay, so this Cappuccino Communication is drawing to a close, and it's time to think about the next step, and I want to suggest two. When I'm teaching this face-to-face, I ask everyone to sit in groups of 4 with people who know them well, facing one another. However, before that happens, each member of the group should have written down on a piece of paper what they perceive to be the dominant leadership style in each of the other 3 people in the group. Then, in turn, each one tells the group how they perceive themselves. I'm always surprised by the revelation that people often see leaders differently to the way that the leader perceives themselves. The second thing would be that once everyone in your church session has viewed this video, talk together in more detail about both the positive and the negative aspects of farmer, merchant and warrior. This, of course, is only an introduction to the theme. And when this has been done, ask the really big question: how do those we lead in our church view our overall leadership style, and do we need to make perhaps some adjustments? Well, that's all for now. Keep the caffeine flowing and God bless you.